Have you ever felt a chill run down your spine or sensed eyes on you when you thought you were alone? In this video, we're exploring 3 eerie encounters with the unknown, stories that reveal what might lie just beyond our world. Each tale will send a shiver through you, but one of them, in particular, carries a bittersweet twist that might even bring a tear to your eye. So, if you're ready, settle in and let's enjoy. My wife and I both got an extremely good deal on a home last year. Our real estate agent was nice enough to be upfront about the history of the home and told us that the previous family had died from a gas leak or something fishy. There were detectors installed in the home now, though, so it was safe. It's a weird feeling, sleeping in a room where you know someone else died. Anyway, things just started happening that I couldn't explain. The first night after moving in, it was raining heavily. I slept good that night. However, the next night, without that white noise, I started to hear strange noises. I could swear there were footsteps downstairs in the kitchen, but I would only hear them from upstairs. Similarly, doors would slam shut upstairs while I was downstairs, but never when I was near them. I kept finding the front door ever so slightly ajar. It was still locked, but I would wake up to find it slightly open when I was absolutely sure I had closed it all the way. A quirky house, for sure, but I had no inkling of anything supernatural going on. Then came around the first Thursday night. I had a weird feeling in my gut all day Thursday, like the kind of uptight feeling you get before leaving on a trip. It got much worse when I got home from work. It was late in the evening and I was sitting at the table in the living room checking my email when I heard a small hissing noise coming from down the hall. I got up to go check out what it was when it very clearly changed from coming down the hall to coming from upstairs. After I walked up to the top of the stairs, a wave of paranoia hit me. As I looked down the hallway to our bedroom, the walls seemed to be moving. It was like one of those magic eye things where what you are looking at stays still, but everything in your peripheral vision starts crawling around. I stood there for a little while, just trying to get a bearing in reality, and I had a feeling like I needed to go downstairs immediately. I don't know why, so I started going back downstairs, and after the first step, the hissing noise stopped, and that weird feeling vanished. I turned back around to look down the hallway, and everything was normal. Things got even scarier after that. When my wife and I were getting ready for bed, the power went out. I looked out the window, and the neighborhood lights were still on, so I knew it had to be a fuse. I got a flashlight and went down to the basement. As I reached for the handle, my hand stopped. I heard that slight hissing noise again, coming from the other side of the door. It sounded sort of like a propane tank leaking. It was that vivid. I got down on my stomach and put my ear to the crack under the door and tried to listen to it a little closer. Suddenly, I heard a very sharp whisper say, "Get out." It sounded like someone had their mouth 2 inches from my ear on the other side of the door under the crack. This scared me so badly, I had to get my wife to come with me to go down to the basement. I didn't tell her why, but I just needed someone else there. She joked about me being scared to go to the basement, but she had no idea. We came back to the door, and I let her go down first ahead of me. Honestly, don't ask why. So, I had a flashlight and she had an oil lamp. The oil lamp was a much better source of light. It let us see everything in the room at once, so I didn't have to worry about something sneaking around down there. I started to move some big boxes to get to the fuse box when the hissing noise started again. This time, it was coming from the ceiling directly above us. I asked my wife if she could hear it, and to my great relief, she said yes. We both looked up at the ceiling, and the hissing noise moved from directly above us to towards the door at the top of the stairs. The door slammed, and at the same time, the oil lamp went out. I took my flashlight out of my pocket and turned it towards my wife. Only it wasn't my wife. What I saw standing there was a naked, dead body. It had cuts all over its pale white skin and gaping wounds revealing red muscle tissue. The eyes were sunken but looking straight at me, and its brown matted hair dripped water. This made me drop my flashlight and scream. My wife suddenly screamed too and picked up my flashlight. She pointed it at me and asked what the hell I was doing screaming like that. The corpse was gone. I replaced the fuse and we went upstairs. I didn't sleep. She agreed the hissing noise and door slamming was really weird, but there had to be some logical explanation for it. Maybe it was the wind that blew the door shut. I knew better. Days passed without anything else weird happening. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Everything went back to normal for a while. Then Thursday came around again. I started to get that feeling again starting early in the evening on Thursday. I had this feeling that Thursdays played some sort of significance with what was going on, so I asked a neighbor about it earlier in the week. Did something bad happen to the previously family on Thursday? After a little small talk, I asked if they knew what happened to the family that used to live here. Apparently, like I was told before, they had all died at night. No one knew why. It must have been a gas leak, though, because they were all asphyxiated. That is, all except the mother. They never found her. What day did this all happen on? Thursday, of course. I was pretty sure the house was being haunted now, but at the same time I realized how stupid it was, right? I mean, there's never been any haunting that was proven to be real. If there was, it would have been famous and on the news. It was just my imagination feeding my paranoia. But still, it was Thursday night again, and I had this sickening feeling in my gut. Before the sun went down, I grabbed my wife and made her stay the night with me in a hotel. I didn't care about rational. Forget staying in that house that night. On the way back to our house in the morning, a bunch of fire trucks passed us on the highway. I had a sinking feeling in my stomach, and I should have known it. The fire trucks were heading to my house. There was thick black smoke billowing out all the windows and the front door, but it looked like there was no fire. The furnace had backfired or something and had started putting out a bunch of black smoke. Thank God there hadn't been a fire. All my stuff was still in there. However, the police showed up and needed to have a few words with me. Apparently, one of the firemen found the skeleton of a woman crouched in the fetal position behind the furnace in the basement. I didn't hear the hissing noise anymore after that, but we still sold the house. I've been taking care of my grandmother for the last couple of months. My grandpa passed away, and my poor grandma has such bad Alzheimer's she can't take care of herself anymore. I basically just feed her and clean up after her while she sits in the living room watching TV. Still, she smiles and talks to me sometimes like there's nothing wrong at all. For a 98-year-old, there really isn't. I woke up at 2 a.m. one night. Insomnia, I suppose. I lay away in bed just thinking about things. I'm ashamed to say one of those things was, how long am I going to keep doing this? I love my grandma, but I have to admit I was not living a happy life. As horrible of a thought it was, I found myself wondering when she would finally pass so that I could get on with my life. I suppose my grandchildren will think the same thing of me one day. I lay awake for what seemed like a very long time before suddenly realizing the reason I couldn't go to sleep. I kept hearing some damnable game show host or something laughing his ass off. It was like a full knee-bending fake as canned corn laugh track, and it seemed to be looping. How had I not noticed it before? Well, now that I had, it was extremely annoying. My grandma must have woken up and turned on the TV. I got up out of bed and walked down the hall. Weirdly enough, there were no lights on in the house, except the faint blinking glow of the television in the living room. The laugh was definitely coming from the television. I turned the corner and saw a man wearing white pants and a yellow-red checkered jacket with a white hat, just standing there laughing. Every once in a while, static would flash on the screen, and he would start laughing again. It was looping. I walked up to the sofa to poke my grandma awake, but to my surprise, the recliner was empty. Oh crap, I thought. Grandma had gone on walkabout. I turned off the TV and hurriedly walked to the front door, which to my relief was still locked and deadbolted. Grandma was still inside the house at least. The next stop was the bathroom. I wanted to make sure she hadn't fallen down or something. Nope, empty. Lastly, I went to go check her bedroom to see if she was still asleep. I cracked her door open to be careful not to wake her, and sure enough, that's where she was, lying in her bed. Phew, I thought to myself. She hadn't gone on walkabout after all. I would have just gone back to sleep at this point, but I noticed she had the covers of her bed draped over her face. It seemed kind of weird, so I walked into her bedroom and stood over her for a moment. The sheet over the face wasn't moving with her breath like it should. I felt a wave of cold sweat wash over me as I stood over her bed watching her face under that sheet. Her chest was not rising and falling, and she wasn't moving in the slightest. "Oh my God, is this it?" I thought to myself again. I reached my hand towards the covers to pull them off, but right as my hand was about to touch them, I heard someone whisper my name. My head snapped around behind me, and standing in the doorway was my grandma. I was right about to yell from surprise, but my grandma had her finger held to her lips to tell me to be quiet. I obeyed. She then motioned with her other hand for me to come to her out in the hallway. "Don't look at it," she whispered to me. As I stepped into the hallway, she closed the door behind me. "It's good you didn't touch it, darling," she said as she hobbled towards the living room. I wanted to shout, "Grandma, who the hell is in your bed?" But for some reason I couldn't talk. She slowly sat back down into her chair and turned the television on again. I walked back into the hallway, horrified of who or what was laying in my grandma's bed. I simply had to go look. I opened the door very, very cautiously and peeked through the crack. The bed was empty. I don't know at what point I went to sleep, or if I even woke up at all the night before. But when I woke up the next day, I found my grandma has passed in her sleep in front of the TV. Goodbye, Grandma. I'll miss you. My mom remarried about 2 years ago. My dad died when I was 12, so she had been widowed for over 10 years. This new relationship was very whirlwind. They met, dated, and got married within 3 months. I didn't know much about the guy, but my mom was happy, so I tried to be supportive. She moved into his house in upstate Virginia and invited my fiancé and me to spend a weekend in her new home to get to know her new husband. My mom's new home was pretty isolated. It sat on a few hundred acres of beautiful, rolling hills and was very picturesque. I was nervous about getting to know this guy, but was really trying to make the most of it. Over the course of our first day there, though, I felt more and more uneasy. I didn't think it was weird, just silly. My mom's new husband was very welcoming and friendly, and they made us feel at home. Yet, I couldn't shake this oppressive feeling. I finally chalked it up to being more upset about my mom remarrying than I was willing to admit to myself. We spent most of the day wandering around outside since I felt worse indoors. That night, my fiancé and I showered together. When I turned my back to him, he stopped talking mid-sentence and asked, "What did you do to your back?" Nothing, I said, but he replied, "You have a large bruise." I jumped out to try and see it in the mirror. I got back in, and we finished showering in silence. Then it was off to bed. The one window in our room looked out over a pitch-black empty field, but I couldn't sleep until I hung something over it. I felt sure that otherwise someone would watch us through the window. The next morning I had a complete meltdown. I woke up and just couldn't stop crying. I told my fiancé we had to leave. He tried to calm me down by saying all the things I'd been telling myself, that my feelings were just a reaction to seeing my mom with someone new, and that the longer I stayed, the easier it would become. But I just had to leave. It was only Saturday morning, and we were supposed to stay until Monday, but I felt hysterical. I knew I was on the verge of a panic attack, and my only concrete thought was that I had to stop crying long enough to make our excuses and get the hell out. So we did. As soon as we hit the road, I felt like a weight had lifted. I even started feeling embarrassed about my behavior, hoping I hadn't insulted my mom's husband by leaving early. Then my fiancé broke the silence. "That bruise on your back, did you get a good look at it?" I had. It looked like someone had touched the middle of my back, with fingers spread wide and their hand at a tilt. I want to make it completely clear that no one had touched my back the previous day, especially hard enough to bruise me. 3 weeks later, my mom came to visit me. The entire time, she kept hounding me to come stay with her again. After trying to change the subject for the 5th time, I finally leveled with her. Before I even finished the story, her face went white as a sheet. She told me she'd been feeling the same way in the house. She hated it and wanted to move as soon as possible. And the real kicker? Her new husband's previous wife shot and killed herself right outside, in the same field our room's window overlooked. And there you have it. 3 encounters that remind us how thin the line is between our world and the unknown. Whether you felt chills or found yourself unexpectedly moved, these stories show that sometimes what lingers does so for a reason. If you enjoyed this journey into the supernatural, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss our next tale. And if you've ever had an experience that left you wondering, share it in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. Thanks for watching and stay curious.